Some of the characters who have popped up in Disney's Mandalorian are simply callbacks to early Star Wars movies. Some, on the other hand, answer decades-old questions, while others just bring up more questions than the show may ever have time to answer. Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian, or Mando as head of the Bounty Hunters Guild Greef Karga calls him, is a walking collection of mysteries and callbacks to older Star Wars lore. There's his rifle, which we see him using early against a beast that tries to drag his ship underwater in Chapter 1, and later to disintegrate Jawas and rival bounty hunters. It's the same weapon Boba Fett is armed with during his animated introduction in the Star Wars Holiday Special, though we never see Fett armed with it in the films. We don't know a lot about the Mandalorian people yet, save for what we've gathered from scenes with the mysterious armorer and other Mandalorian survivors. But the very presence of Mando, foundling or not, tempts us to hope we'll get to see more of this fictional culture and maybe some answers to some more basic questions. For instance, will we ever see Mando without his helmet?
So what happens if you take that thing off? They come after you and kill you?
No. You just can't ever put it back on again.
Plot-wise, the goggled, long-snouted character who calls Mandalorian a ride early in Chapter 1 doesn't do all that much. He calls Mando a droid-driven speeder. Mando passes on the droid and the alien calls him another speeder that's literally falling apart, and driven by famous funny nerd Brian Posehn. But the goggled flutist has more meaning not only as far as Star Wars lore is concerned, but the ancient narrative roots the Mandalorian is tapping into. More involved Star Wars fans will recognize the flutist as an alien called a Kubaz. It's a Kubaz in A New Hope who stalks the heroes around Mos Eisley and turns them into the Imperial Stormtroopers. But he's more than just an Easter egg. When discussing the advice George Lucas gave him, Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau revealed that Lucas reminded him to think about ancient stories of heroism. Lucas was heavily influenced by the writing of Joseph Campbell, whose book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, breaks down the commonalities among heroic tales in different cultures. In light of this, the flutist Kubaz seems like a clear reflection of Lucas's advice, as the scene is reminiscent of the myth of the river Styx. In ancient Greek myth, Styx was a river crossed by the newly dead by way of the ferryman Charon, but the passage cost a coin, like the one Mando tosses to the Kubaz. A Kubaz sniper later appears in Chapter 4, attempting to assassinate Baby Yoda, which, regardless as to whether this is the same Kubaz flutist or not, further reinforces the whole Kubaz as an agent of death idea. That's some pretty literary stuff, Favreau. There are a couple of interesting things going on with the client, the cold Imperial who hires a Mandalorian to bring him the asset, and who reacts with such a brimming undertone of threat when Mando dares to ask him what will happen to the asset once he has it. For starters, there's a surprising but perfect casting choice of Werner Herzog. While Herzog has acted before, he's best known as an acclaimed director of existential art films and thinky documentaries. Even setting aside the casting choice, the client tells us a lot about the post-Imperial Star Wars world, while at the same time leading to some interesting questions. The client is presumably someone who wielded a good deal of power in the Empire before its fall. In spite of the Empire's defeat in Return of the Jedi, the client has significant resources and influence, at least enough to operate without too much concern. He's managed to keep a loyal band of stormtroopers by his side, as well as some kind of intelligence network. Clearly, the Empire is not as dead as the Death Star. If Queel, the alien farmer in The Mandalorian's first two chapters, who helps Mando find the assets and get back home, looks familiar to you, there are a few reasons why that might be the case. Sure, it could be because you recognize the facial similarities to Nick Nolte, who voices the elderly farmer. But it might also be that you remember one of the diminutive races we meet in 1980's The Empire Strikes Back. Queel is an Ugnaught, a race seen in Bespin's floating cloud city. They're the guys working the machines when Han Solo is frozen in carbonite, and they're the ones playing catch with C-3PO's golden head when Chewbacca saves it and the rest of the droid from being scrapped. When the Mandalorian offers Queel a place on board his ship at the end of Chapter 2, the farmer tells the bounty hunter that he is honored, but that he long worked to free himself from the labor of others. Could it be that Queel was one of the workers we see in Cloud City? It's possible. We have spoken. Baby Yoda. Can you believe it? It's too freaking cute.
Stop touching things.
Chapter 1 of The Mandalorian ends with a huge reveal that the asset, Mando's target, and apparently the target of every single member of the Bounty Hunters Guild, is an infant member of whatever species the late Jedi Master Yoda hails from. We're not being lazy here. No one knows much about Yoda's species, and George Lucas kept it unnamed on purpose. But the baby's presence and Mando's affection for it has some huge implications for the Star Wars mythos. For one thing, the way the infant saves Mando from the horned beast in Chapter 2 tells us Yoda's species is even more attuned with the Force than we ever imagined. Its age leads us to a lot of questions. At 50 years old, Baby Yoda would have been alive during the era of the prequel films. Could it be that it was hidden just before the Empire came to power? Did Yoda know about the baby? Not to mention, who was guarding Baby Yoda in the first place? Who was paying for all the men that the Mandalorian and IG-11 had to kill to get to it? And more importantly, why were they guarding it? In Chapter 4, we meet Cara Dune, a former shock trooper for the Rebellion. Mando takes note of Cara as soon as he arrives on Sorgan, worrying she's there to kill him and take Baby Yoda to whatever horrific fate the last remnants of the Empire have in store for him. Cara notices Mando too, making similar assumptions about him. And the two mercenaries enjoy a fairly brutal melee before making peace and throwing back some soup together.
You want some soup?
After their fight, Cara tells Mando she became a mercenary after the fall of the Empire. She describes being relegated to duties she couldn't stomach, like protecting delegates and suppressing riots once her role of shock trooper was over, at which point she became a gun for hire. We don't know a lot of details about Cara's character yet, but what little we know and what we see from her tells us a lot. More than anything, we know Cara has a strong moral compass. Cara's the first mercenary character we meet who we know for sure harbors loyalties to the Rebellion. As much as she expresses doubts, she refuses to abandon the farming village and even saves Baby Yoda's life. The fact that she assumed Mando had a fob on her means she's on the outs with the guild. Perhaps, like Mando, Cara chose conscience over duty, and that's what has her in hiding. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.